Sure. Well, I've been with PETA now for many years. I've been with PETA for about 26 years, and I started working with PETA in the US. I've worked for PETA in the UK. I was the director of PETA UK for a number of years. I was the CEO of PETA India for a number of years. So this is really just a natural expansion, I would say, of the work that I've already been doing for all of these decades. And it's an opportunity for me to use the values that I have acquired throughout my life, that I've acquired through my Indian background, especially my grandmother, who raised me, and who helped me understand about concepts like ahimsa, jivdaya, being kind to animals, even if they're little spiders in your house, to gently pick them up and put them outside. It's these types of values that I would be now bringing to the international scale through the work I do with PETA. Yeah. Yeah. So, what I've learned, through my journey, which has already spanned all of those countries. I've already been working in the UK, did work in Europe and the Middle East, India, and the US as well. And we live in a world in which, yes, there are local issues. There's lots of local issues. So in every single one of those areas, we work on these local issues. For instance, in India, we do a lot of projects related to captive elephants. Elephants who are chained to temples, to floors and temples, for instance, which is a unique thing for India and certain Asian countries. Or in Jordan, we're working on campaigns regarding uh, trying to alleviate the suffering of animals used for work, like donkeys who are made to haul tourists. In France, we focus a lot on the fashion industry, and to encourage a move toward vegan fashions and away from fur and exotic skins. So there's always local issues, but then there's global issues because we have companies like, whether it's Hermes for exotic skins, fashions that we're working on, or Louis Vuitton, or whether it's somebody like a McDonald's or a KFC turning animals into meat. There's lots of companies that are global in scale. And so in all of these regions, we're going to have both the local campaigns as well as the global campaigns. And I think that having this sort of umbrella, PETA International, allows us to combine forces and just be a louder voice for animals in that way. Well, I think, bringing together these forces, being a louder voice, is certainly one of them. And I think that, we already are doing that in a lot of ways, where we're having kind of cohesive targets to try to change practices. I mentioned Hermes. I actually had done a demonstration myself outside of the Hermes store in Mumbai, where I was dressed as a reptile, being skinned. So, these are the kinds of things. We also do a lot of knowledge sharing. For instance, PETA India was able to convince the Indian government to stop testing cosmetics and their ingredients on animals because we were able to use the example from other countries. And so we also do that sort of thing. There's lots of move away from the use of animals for experimentation happening, for instance, right now in the United States. So that is an example that we can use in other countries to say, let's move to a more modern, human relevant way of experimentation. So those are the kinds of like campaigns, issues, knowledge sharing, powering together that we're doing, but also and this is, something very important to me, and something that I'm focusing on a lot is the use of technology to help animals. So I know that you're sitting in Kerala. I'll give you one example of what we're doing is we have created these mechanical elephants to use in temples instead of real elephants. So, this is something that now there's about 20 or so temples in South India that are using these mechanical marvels. They move just like real elephants do. And what this does is it allows real elephants to live in their jungle homes as God intended. And similarly, we have a talking elephant actually going into schools. We have a talking elephant going into schools in the United States. This talking elephant we've now also brought to Asia, first to India, where her name is Ellie. She goes to school. She talks to children about being kind to animals. And because it's such a unique way, the kids, essentially, I mean, it's almost like having a real elephant in your classroom, but one that's happy to speak to you and happy to be in that environment because it's a robot. And so it's a really unique way of engaging children in this very important message about kindness to animals. We're also doing exciting things in college campuses where we're taking an experience where people can it's essentially they're talking to an alien through a virtual reality type of experience, and the alien has captured them, and the way for them to get away from the alien and to escape is to convince the alien that they are kind to animals. Which, these are some interesting kind of ways to raise awareness about animal rights that we're putting into practice, or to change the way animals are treated altogether. In Mumbai, we have encouraged the use of beautiful heritage-style electronic carriages instead of horse carts. So there's lots and lots of ways that technology can be used and put in place to help animals, and I'm sure that we haven't discovered all of them as yet. And but this is an exciting new area that PETA International will be focusing on more and more. And the thing about these elephants, we've just rescued an elephant from a temple in Maharashtra. And of course, everybody is well-meaning. Nobody intends to be cruel to these animals. But I think what happens is that sometimes we can, well, a lot of people don't know what an elephant requires. We're so used to seeing elephants in these environments. We're so used to seeing them chained up and all alone in a concrete room that becomes normalized. But it's not normal at all because, it causes the animals enormous suffering. The elephants, and it's not just in temples, when they're used for rides, when they're used for circuses, these incredibly intelligent animals are essentially chained stationary nearly 24/7. Because the chains and the concrete that they're on all of that time are really hard on their bodies. Their feet and their legs start to deteriorate. Their bone health starts to deteriorate. But more than that, a lot of these elephants, whether they're male or female, they have social needs, but especially the female elephants, and a lot of them are female elephants, in nature would be living in extended family herds. And just the way we need our family and we need our friends for our own mental well-being, so do they. So we just rescued an elephant who had been at this temple since she was 3 years old. She's 36. So she'd been at that temple for 33 years, all by herself. You can imagine if somebody did that to us, how we would feel. And so, in frustration, this elephant had killed the chief Swamiji of the temple. And this happens a lot. You know, the elephants retaliate, they become violent because they don't know any other way to express themselves when they're that frustrated. So these mechanical elephants not only allow these elephants to live with their families, but they also protect human beings from upset elephants. We needed a win-win solution here. We needed something that allowed the very important cultural traditions to continue and the beautiful ceremonies. But we just needed to do it in a more beautiful way. Beautiful to everybody involved, including the elephants. I'm glad you asked me about that because I can plug my book, Survival at Stake. So I've written a whole book on this topic. It's called Survival at Stake, how the way we treat animals is key to human existence. And the crux of that book, the whole reason why I wrote that book is because people would always ask me questions like, well, what about humans? Shouldn't we solve human problems first? And this kind of a thing. And I realized people who are asking me that don't understand that what happens to animals is very much linked to our own well-being. Is what happens, you know, we're not two separate things here. And it's not only nice to be nice to animals, it's necessary for our own well-being. And what I mean by that is, look, first of all, we are animals. We are not separate to the other beings that we share this planet with. We are living on the same planet. What happens to the planet affects all of us. And so we are in the same boat as other animals. And so, therefore, what we do to other animals has consequences upon us. So, the meat industry, the rearing of animals for meat, eggs, and dairy is a major contributor to the greenhouse gases that cause the climate catastrophe. The way that we rear animals for food that we do not need to eat, because of the demand is so great for these products, we put these animals in the most confined, crowded spaces by the thousands in one shed. So what happens is, let's say you have a shed of thousands of chickens. Well, if one chicken gets sick, that spreads like wildfire, that disease. And so in order to try to combat that, these animals are pumped full of antibiotics. Animals used for food, there's more antibiotics used in animals used for food than in human beings directly. So obviously, being that that's the food chain, it trickles down into us. And this is now resulting in the phenomenon that you mentioned, which is called antibiotic resistance. Antibiotic resistance is when drugs that human beings need stop working because of the overuse of them. So antibiotic resistance is a major public health issue in India, around the world, causing many deaths already. And this is set to worsen. And a huge part of that is our overuse of antibiotics in the food chain. And a similar kind of thing with zoonotic disease. I wrote that book during the COVID pandemic. I thought about writing that book during the COVID pandemic because the leading theory about COVID is that it jumped to humans initially from a wildlife meat market. And this is just one of the many zoonotic diseases that are affecting human beings directly from the way that we treat animals. Others, bird flu, for instance. Bird flu is spreads through chicken farms in India and other parts of Asia, now around the world, the United States. And if we thought COVID was bad, bird flu has around 60% mortality rate in human beings. Right now, bird flu is such that it does not transfer very easily from person to person. But because of the chicken farms there are all around the world and the interaction that is happening between chickens and, the humans who work on the farm or other farms in the area, for instance, dairy farms, now what's happening is that bird flu has mutated to affecting cows. That's happened in the United States, for instance. It's more increasingly infecting mammals. In other words, because of the chicken farms, it seems like it may be just a matter of time before bird flu mutates in such a way that it more easily infects humans and that it starts moving through humans very, very rapidly. So, there's lots of examples of the way in how we treat animals, it actually affects our own well-being. That book, it goes through not just animals used for food, but the way we treat animals used for clothing. For instance, leather is the most polluting material in fashion. The way that we treat animals in experimentation facilities, for entertainment and so on. And not just that, even just generally in society, it's now well recognized that people who are cruel to animals often move on to be violent to human beings as well. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, a lot of times, wild birds are, blamed for bird flu. Well, wild birds have always been around since the beginning of time, right? Like, what has changed to truly be the cause of the spread of bird flu? And it is the increasing number of chickens that we confine to egg farms and to meat farms. That is the one factor that has changed. That is the one factor that allows quick disease spread because all the birds are so close together. And so the wild birds are really made the scapegoats when the reality of the situation is the chickens. We can make all these excuses all we want, but if we decide not to acknowledge the truth, only we are going to get hurt by that. It's not going to go away just because we make excuses. So, um, you know, not just because of bird flu, but because of the chickens themselves, because of our health. Um, I always tell people one of the easiest people always say, "Oh, how can I help animals?" First things first, one of the easiest things that you can do to help animals is to not eat them. So if you want to help animals and if you want to help hundreds of animals, just by going vegan, it is said that each person can save the lives of about 200 animals a year. So imagine 200 lives. And these are, the more we know about animals and the more we learn about animals, we know so much more about animal intelligence, animals' emotions these days. Chickens, for instance, are incredible protective mothers, just like cows. They worry about the future. They can count. They have a sophisticated way of communicating with each other. They have a language. So the more we know about them, the more we realize, well, why would I eat a chicken but not a parrot? Or why would I eat a pig but not a dog? These are all animals that have rich emotional lives and intelligence, and there's really no rhyme or reason to it besides arbitrary decisions on which animals somebody has decided is food versus wildlife versus friend, that kind of a thing. So yes, go vegan. Anybody can log on to PETA's website. We have something called a vegan starter kit to help anybody who's thinking in this direction. Well, corporations are just made up of people like you and me, right? They're made up of individuals. And what does a corporation want to do? A corporation wants to sell their products, right? They want to make money from selling their products. So the more that individuals, consumers demand for vegan products, the more that consumers refuse to buy products that come from cruelty to animals, the more that corporations respond and are responding to fulfill that need. So yes, we do focus on meeting with and encouraging corporations, but really the message that we take to them is that people want this. And we are going to achieve our goals of getting, the fashion industry to stop making bags, belts, and shoes out of animals, or we're going to succeed in getting the fast food chains to have vegan options instead of the animal derived foods, or this sort of thing, or all the cosmetics brands around the world to stop testing on animals. We're going to achieve these things quicker the more that consumers demand it. So our huge focus in every single one of the areas that I oversee, and that PETA US, which does not fall under my remit, but that PETA US also does, is focus heavily on empowering individuals and individual consumers in recognizing how much power they actually have to help animals, because it is a tremendous power. It's a tremendous power. It is absolutely wrong when people think that, well, this is happening anyway, or what do I have to do with it, or what difference does it make if I buy a pair of leather shoes simply because I like the way they look? It makes a difference. It makes a difference because the message you have given to that company is that I'm okay with cows being skinned, and I'm okay with that skin being turned into shoes. Really? I think that any person really, if they thought about it, are not really okay with that. It looks like a pair of shoes, so it's so distant from the slaughterhouse that we forget. But if we really think about it, are we okay with somebody's skin being on our feet? I don't think so. So I think it's our responsibility to ensure that corporations get the message of kindness. And the more that they do, the more that I believe that they will continue to respond to that demand. I'm so glad that you raised the concept of choice, because something that people say a lot, which is, in my opinion, flawed as a logic, is people say, well, it's my personal choice to eat animals. It's my personal choice. No, 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 no. It's personal choice is, you can use that when there's no victims. When there's a victim, when somebody is getting hurt, that is not a personal choice. We do not go around saying it's my personal choice to hit this child, or it's my personal choice to do something else that hurts somebody else. We don't think of those as valid choices. Why should it be any different when it comes to animals? And so, personal choice, I think, that concept goes out the window when we recognize that somebody is getting hurt in the process here. That's not a personal choice. It's also not, what about my personal choice to live on a healthy planet? Or, what about my personal choice to, uh, have wildlife in the world? And what I mean by that is, so much of the land, um, that we use for rearing animals used for food is actually land that has been cleared from jungles and wild areas. So, um, it is told, scientists tell us now that meat, egg, and dairy production is actually the single biggest cause of even uh, endangerment and extinction of even wild animals because of the land that's cleared to raise animals used for food for the demand of animals used for food. I know that, people who eat meat, I used to eat meat too. I haven't eaten meat in a very long time. I've been vegan for even longer than I've been at PETA, so that's a very long time. Um, so lab grown meat, it's a potential, for people who eat meat, to have an option to eat meat, but that hasn't come from slaughter. However, we don't have to wait for the invention of lab-grown meat to make ethical choices today. There's so many delicious vegan meat type products on the market today. That taste like lamb, that taste like chicken, that taste like fish, including in India. There's so many delicious vegan ice creams and vegan, non-dairy milks and vegan cheeses on the market. There's now even vegan eggs. Before I spoke to you, I just had my tofu scramble at a late breakfast. So, there's lots of delicious options instead of having the animal derived foods. And, not only will the animals be spared of suffering because of it, but our own arteries and our own bodies will thank us for making those choices too. 3 out of 4 people around the world are lactose intolerant, which actually means when you have 3 out of 4 people, that means that lactose intolerance is the norm. And being able to digest milk after infancy is the weird thing. Because what is milk? Milk is baby food. It's infant food. It is something that a mother makes for her child. It even then, if you look at other members of the animal kingdom, they only drink milk when they're babies. They don't drink milk after infancy, and they certainly don't drink the milk of another species. And so, nature has made it so that milk is infant food, and it is infant food for your own species. Your mother's milk is in that way best. That means that none of us need milk. None of us need milk after certainly not after infancy, the same way that other mammals don't need milk after infancy. So, having said that, for people who like that milky taste, there's oat milk, there's almond milk, there's all sorts of milk, rice milk, coconut milk, all sorts of milk made from plants that are frankly way more delicious than what I remember animal milk to be. I think animal milk was actually quite gross. Oh, that was yeah, that was an awful experience. Uh it was when I had just started out with PETA, and I was in a slaughterhouse in Kolkata. We were doing a project, well, not a project. We were trying to get the leather industry to at least make some level of welfare improvements in their supply chain. And so I had gone to a slaughterhouse in Kolkata, and I had never been to a slaughterhouse before. I had gone there not only with them, but also to document conditions. And there was all these butchers around, and it was such mayhem. Before you even got there, you could smell the slaughterhouse. And when I walked in, there was a calf who was really, really trying to stand his ground. He was really trying hard not to be moved to the slaughter floor. He was crying out, and he was terrified. And, it made me think he's crying out. He's crying out for his mother, who is nowhere to be found, has probably been killed herself. And they cast him to the floor, and in that moment, his eyes locked with mine. Now, I couldn't save his life. Well, what they were doing to him was actually not illegal. At that time, he was too old. There are laws regarding how old a cow or an animal should be before they're slaughtered. In West Bengal, they're allowing cows to be killed. There was nothing illegal as such for me to be able to save his life, and it was just in that moment anyway when I walked in. And I thought that he must think that I'm one of the people who's out to harm him. And even though I couldn't save his life that day, that was the moment that I made a mental promise to him that I'm going to spend my life fighting for animals like him so that they don't have to go through what he suffered. Sadly, so many animals do still go through what he suffered, but so many animals really have been spared that suffering because of the work that PETA does and the work that other animal protection advocates do and that individuals do, that choices that individuals make to not eat animals, to not wear animals, and so on. So yes, that was certainly a defining moment in my career, um, to keep going. And yeah, I remember him. I remember him every day. Yeah, hugely. So even though I used to eat meat because my parents they moved to the US from Gujarat. Uh, my father first moved to the US in 1969. Back then, being vegetarian, now, there's so many vegans and everything in the US, but back then, even being vegetarian was unheard of. He essentially started eating meat. So when I grew up, I was allowed to eat meat as such, and I did. Um, but nevertheless, there was still um the way that my family was around animals, and the way that especially my grandmother, who is my father's mother, who came to live with us from Gujarat, the way that she was around animals. I mentioned that she would pick up insects and put them outside instead of killing them or crushing them, in the house. She would talk very, very fondly of animals. My father would always be also watching wildlife documentaries and so on. And so there was that respect for even though some members of my family were eating animals, there was that respect for animals still there. And it was just a matter of time that we put two and two together again and realized that, well, what's the difference between this animal and the animal on our plate? There's no difference. Both of them want to live. And so I became vegetarian and then eventually vegan, and then influenced my family also to essentially go back to their roots and to no longer eat animals. Yeah, that was weird. Being burned in effigy, that was a strange time. But there's more people who care about animals than who don't care about animals. Uh, Even though, yes, many people eat meat and, many people wear animals, but that's only because we've been socially conditioned to think that that's okay. But in reality, um, very few people are going to say, yes, I'm in favor of cruelty to animals. Like, who's going to say that? Because most of us consider ourselves to be kind. So it's really just a matter of increasing that understanding and helping people unlearn some of the lessons of cruelty that we have learned from society and that have become normalized and have become normalized through the industries, especially that are pushing these products onto us and things like that. So yes, we do often face a backlash. We often face a backlash from the people that we're campaigning against, for the people that we're trying to stop them from engaging in some kind of cruelty. But regardless of the amount of backlash we face, I think that we experience more support. And that support is growing the more and more people learn about what happens to animals. I encourage anybody watching or listening to follow PETA pages, PETA India pages, and look at the videos. Look at the videos that we have. PETA focuses very, very heavily on investigations because these industries, the meat industry, the egg industry, dairy, leather, they all work so hard to hide what happens to animals from the public. Because they know, if people knew, they would stop supporting them. They would stop buying their products. And so, especially because of the power of social media, we're able to share that. We're able to share what really happens to animals with so many people so quickly and so rapidly. Sometimes our videos get millions of views, all of a sudden. And people can see, oh, that a lot of people didn't know, or they learned for the first time that because male chicks cannot lay eggs, that they're killed by the egg industry, or that because male calves cannot lay eggs, they're killed by the dairy industry, or that dogs and cats are sometimes killed for leather, or any number of things that they're learning through these videos. And so I encourage people, log on, check them out, learn for yourself, and share them and pass them on. And I firmly believe that the more people who see this, the more people will be able to bring out that kindness that they actually inherently have through their decisions and their behaviors. Well, I think I would feel worse about what happens to animals if I wasn't doing something to help animals. And so, I do hear sometimes people say, oh, they feel helpless, or they feel, um, overwhelmed with the thoughts about what's happening to animals. The best way to get over that is to make a list of what you're going to do, decide what you're going to do, and take some steps to help animals. You don't need a whole lot of time. You just need a kind of commitment to do it. So it can be as simple as putting out a bowl of clean water for the dogs, cats, birds, cows, on your street. It can be about cooking vegan meals for your family. It can be deciding not to buy leather shoes anymore, or deciding not to buy products tested on animals. PETA has a database on our website of cosmetics companies that don't test on animals. It can be like that, or it can be something like if you're in India, taking PETA India's free humane education kit, Compassionate Citizen, providing that to your child's teacher, volunteering at an animal shelter, helping those dogs and cats get adopted. There's so many ways. So I would encourage people to log on to whatever PETA website applies to their country. It could be PETAindia.com or PETA.org.uk. And to go through. There's so many ways to help animals, whether it's sharing a video, whether it's signing a petition on these websites, any of that. It all, moves the issue forward. And invite a friend. Because if you think about it, look, we can take action for animals. If each one of us just got one more person involved, whether it's to donate to their favorite animal charity, whatever it is, if you got just one more person involved, that's doubling your impact right there. So that's all it takes. Just get one more person involved, and you're already doing doubly well. I think that, well, people who say that are often people who are hurting animals. So that's one thing. We hear that a lot from people who would rather carry on doing whatever they're doing, whether it's, horse racing or whatever cruelty they're engaging in. A lot of times we hear that from people like that who are campaigning against for their cruelty to animals. Otherwise, for people who are using that sometimes as, as a kind of excuse not to go vegan or not to stop buying leather or this kind of thing, what's genuinely extreme is what we do to animals. Choosing to put choosing to put oat milk in your coffee is not extreme. That's just a choice, a simple choice. What we do to cows for dairy, that is extreme. Because, around the world, as I mentioned just a little while ago, because male calves cannot produce milk, it is common to kill them. In India, they're left to starve. They're abandoned on the streets or they're sent to slaughter. In Western countries, the calves are often used for veal, which is a type of meat in which they're kept deliberately anemic before they're killed. So that is extreme. Deciding, oh no, I'm not going to have bovine milk, but I'm instead going to have oat milk or almond milk in my coffee, that's not extreme. That's not extreme. To say that, I'm going to choose a blazer that's not made of wool, that's not extreme. What is extreme is the fact that sheep in the wool industry are held down by workers as they struggle and have a blade put onto their body. They're moving so fast in the shearing industry that these sheep are ended up bloody and short, bloody, they're lacerated. That is extreme. Choosing not to buy wool, that is not extreme. That's just a choice of kindness. So I think when we really put it into perspective, what we're talking about, I think it's these industries that are hurting animals that would like us to believe that these kind choices are extreme so that they can carry on doing what they're doing. But in reality, what they're doing is extreme. I think that with the way that the world is going, we're definitely going to see a lot more people choose to live a vegan lifestyle over the next 5 years. That alone will have such a tremendous impact on animals, on the environment, on how much money we spend as governments or as society on public health issues. I think that we're seeing just a trajectory up and up and up when it comes to that sort of thing. We're already seeing the fashion industry start to use, and I love this, to use plants instead of animals to make leather. In India, they're turning mango into leather. They're turning sugarcane into leather, or coconut into leather. So imagine 5 years down the line, I hope to see an industry that is starting to lean more toward being dominated by eco-friendly leathers and plant-based leathers instead of leathers made from animals. Um, Already around the world, we're starting to see that, countries where, for instance, bullfighting was once a very entrenched tradition are starting to turn their backs on it, where animals used in circuses are being replaced with robots and holograms and wonderful technologies. Life moves rapidly, society moves rapidly, culture moves rapidly. Um, I hope that in the next 5 years, we're going to be able to look back at some of the ways that we treated animals simply even just 5 years before to say, I can't believe we used to do that. Apart from logging onto PETA's website where we have lots and lots of ideas, a lot of people ask me, um, you know, how can they tell what is animal welfare? What is the right way to treat an animal, or this kind of thing? And I always tell them, it's very simple. When I was in school, we had something called the golden rule. And it was do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which simply means treat others the way you would like to be treated. So I think when it comes to animals and the way you're deciding how to engage with animals, just think to yourself, would I like to be in that situation? Would I like to be in a cage? No, then you shouldn't put a bird in a cage. If I would not like to be in a little glass room, then don't put a fish in a tank. Um, if I don't want to be skinned and turned into a handbag, then don't do that to cows or sheep or goats or pigs. Um, so I think that's really the starting point. We talked about, the easiest thing that any of us can do as individuals to help huge numbers of animals is to not eat them, not wear them. And I think, these days on social media, it's so easy to form a group. Form a group of like-minded people, get involved with other vegan groups, other animal protection groups, make those friends, have those societal connects, and get together and, discuss ways in which you can help animals in your own community be stronger as a team. So these are some of the ways that I would suggest to get started.